Welcome to DC to Be Revolution, helping chiropractic students think big in order to live large. I'm your host, Noah Volz, and today I'm here with Dr. Bobby Maybee. He has been practicing for 12 years and is currently in Portland, Oregon. In addition to that, he is using his own experiences and those of young chiropractors and students he mentors to write a survival guide for chiropractic students and young grads. Can't wait for that to be finished. Dr. Maybee, thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. As a precursor to the show, I want to make sure everyone understands that I'm not a guru. I'm not here to sell anything. I'm just a clinician who has experiences that I would like to share. So as long as we got that set forward, we can go ahead.
Yeah, I really appreciate that disclaimer, so to speak. And so, without giving away the whole idea, I wonder if you could touch briefly on what is in the survival guide that you're creating for chiropractors and why you felt like that was something that's needed in the chiropractic profession.
Yeah, I think for the most part, I think if hopefully your viewers and other students are starting to realize what you get taught in school and what you actually need to be a successful chiropractor sometimes are two different things. And there are a lot of people, once you get out, that are sort of like sharks in the water just waiting for you to fall in so they can fill in that void. They can fill that vessel with what they feel like you need to have to be successful and then sell it to you, of course. There's just a lot of people who are sort of lost in those first 2 years, and the first 2 years are the most important. So what I tried to do is I tried to collect questions and concerns and some of my own experiences and other people's experiences into a, like a survival guide, like, hey, watch yourself. If you see this situation, you're going to want to be wary of this. Like for instance, getting into associate contracts versus independent contractor contracts. What are the pitfalls with the two, and how do employers sometimes blend the two together, which is much to your detriment, and how to protect yourself legally, all the way down to mindset sort of things, where I tried to in the book impart the idea that it's not always what you know. It's not the widget or the technique or the delivery system or the philosophy that'll get it done, but it's basically if you could boil it down to a page, sometimes it's just like you got to do the work. You got to work hard. And if I can impart that to people, that nothing in this profession is given to you whatsoever. Everyone who's got anything, whether you like what they got or not, they worked for it, and you have to respect that. As a more seasoned chiropractor who's seen younger chiropractors come into practices, either to observe as a shadow or to be a new employee, what we see a lot, the older guys, what we see a lot is a young chiropractor come in, look at how you're practicing, check out everything, and be like, yeah, I can do this too. And they have no idea what it took to get to a level of opening an office, hiring employees, developing the networks that get the patients to come in your door and things like that. It's just sort of this naive assumption that it just kind of falls in your lap, and it does not work like that whatsoever. So the book is supposed to prepare people for that. Like, if you are not prepared for that idea, that there is a certain amount of sweat equity that you have to put in the beginning, you're going to be in for a rude awakening. So I try to shake people. The book's about shaking people. It's not necessarily about survival, because I don't want the book to give out the impression that we're all struggling and we need this book to survive. We're not in a swamp being chased by alligators. Most of us can and will be quite successful. The book's also about thriving. It's more like watch your butt, watch your ass, because there are things you got to watch out for. If you're not looking, you're going to get hit in the back of the head, and it's going to hurt.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps this is naive of me, but I think of it as almost like it's almost like a video game. Like, there's going to be these traps, there's going to be these pitfalls, there's going to be these monsters trying to get you. And, if you have a tool, like whether it's a survival guide or a book or, a sword or whatever tool you have, that's going to help you navigate all of those obstacles. And that's really the goal of this show too, is giving people the information and the knowledge that they need in order to navigate the obstacles. So I'm curious, what your first 2 years were like out of, was it relatively easy for you, or did you kind of learn by trial by error? Did you learn because you got sucked into something similar?
A little bit of both. But before we say that, your video game analogy is good, because the people that I've seen who are uber successful in this profession at running practices, they think of it as a game. They don't get really emotionally tied into the practice. There's a lot of personal pride and ego tied into being successful, but a lot of these people are really plugging and playing and trying different things, and they learn to go around pitfalls after they fell in it the first time. And it's like a game. And if you can treat it like that, then I think you'll be way far ahead compared to other people who really tie a lot of emotional value into what they're doing with their practice. But we can get to that in a second. For me, when I was a chiropractic assistant, whatever you want to call it, while I was an undergrad, and I had a husband and wife chiropractic team that I worked for, and they pretty much said, you have a job when you get out of chiropractic school, come on back, just get licensed and get your degree and come on back and work for us. And so my whole time through chiropractic college, I was sitting in the back row like, I've got a job, this is cake. I just got to get out of here and go back to work in my hometown. And then when I got back there, they slid that contract across the table there that said, well, yeah, we'll pay you $500 a month, and we'll give you like 40% of whatever you make after that. And that was a rude awakening. Maybe I should have discussed that before I moved back to town. Obviously, the first pitfall I fell into was contract negotiation. So I declined that, of course. And then I just basically in my mind said, you know what, I could work for the best, whoever the best is in this state. At that time, it's California is where I'm from. So I could work for whoever's doing the best in the state. I could work for them. I don't care who it is. I could work for them. And I just made a couple phone calls, looked at some of the ads, tried to find who was doing the best, who was the biggest practice around, and fell into a practice that was basically industrial medicine type of personal injury, cash type of high volume practice in the Bay Area, where we had 6 offices spread out throughout the Bay Area, which allows you to be on TV. So we had a lot of TV coverage, because if you're at a certain size of practices, TV becomes a reasonable way to advertise, because you can reach all those people within the area. And spent my first year there as a scrub, basically just doing all the dirtiest work you can, and working long hours, and driving long distances from one practice to another to fill up spots and fill up holes, and adjusting patients, and seeing a lot of volume, and learning how to do the most basic things, like how to wash a table appropriately, and how to fold laundry, and how to do just the basic treatment plan, how to adjust somebody and not hurt them, how to listen to their concerns, just the most basic stuff that you would never think of coming out of school. And in the second year, I started becoming almost like a manager position, running my own clinic within one of those 6. The leash gets loosened a little bit, and then you start to earn respect of your employer or boss, whatever you want to call them. Eventually, after those 2 years, sold the stock I had in the corporation, left, and started my own practice. Worked there part-time here and now again as my practice was coming up, and just started my own all-cash practice with an MD friend of mine. We partnered in a MD DC all-cash practice in a small town on the beach in California. So it's
brilliant. Yeah. Thanks for walking us through that. It seems like you learned a lot, kind of from the ground up. It's almost that idea of like starting at the corporation at the ground floor and doing every single job until you become the CEO, because then you know exactly like when you have to delegate and you have to ask somebody, you've done it, so you know exactly what it takes to do that.
at some point, and we discussed before we went on air, at that job, I would be responsible for interviewing and sort of being the last word on who we should hire and who we shouldn't hire in those offices. And sometimes we were flabbergasted at the students, and this is not to offend any students, but this is to give you fair warning. We were flabbergasted at the students who were graduates that were coming to our practice asking for enormous salaries that they expected because they had a chiropractic degree, that they were going to get this enormous salary for just showing up to the job. But they couldn't do the most basic things in the world. They actually refused to do the most basic things in the world, because we'd have them shadow us and be like, oh, can you answer that phone, or can you do this and that? And simple tasks like answering a phone or, sometimes, I said this on another podcast, sometimes when the toilet breaks, you clean the toilet. There's no one to call, you clean the toilet. And to get that, sometimes it's almost like a boot camp. You got to show the younger chiropractors that sometimes it's not pretty. You have to pick up the phone sometimes. Sometimes you have to clean the toilet. Sometimes you have to discharge a patient to defend your staff when they're being rude. I mean, you got to get in there and get dirty. If you assume someone else is going to do all the dirty work, you can't do this on your own. Because when you start out on your own, sometimes it's just you. There's no one else. So yeah, I mean, you learn a lot by, that is one of the advantages to me writing this book, is that I've practiced in almost every single scenario there could be in. High volume, low volume, super evidence-based, not so evidence-based. The only place I've really never practiced is a truly vitalistic practice, just because I don't follow that sort of philosophical leaning. But I've seen it win and lose in so many different ways that I think I come from a unique perspective that's not like your typical guru that's going to sell you unicorns and rainbows and say everything's going to win and you're going to make $15.8 million if you just follow my plan. I would say you are going to get kicked in the teeth a couple times, but then when you get back up, you'll win. And then you're going to get kicked in the teeth again, but if you get back up, you'll win. And if you keep getting back up every time you get kicked in the teeth, you can look back after about 4, 5, 6, 7 years, depending on who you are, and you can realize that you won a lot. You're going to be completely different every single year. If you're not changing in the first 5 years, if you're not completely different than who you were the year before, you probably aren't progressing at all. So it makes my my point of view is pretty strong, because I've been in the trenches for a long time now.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I do feel like, hosting this channel, there are a lot of people that, say that it's going to be hard work. I hear that a lot, but, don't, not to the extent that you're saying, like how difficult it really is going to be. This is my third career. I've already been a business owner in the past, and it was never easy. It took so much of myself in order to be successful in business. And we talked pre-roll too. Once I was successful in business, every other area of my life had fallen apart. So then I had to pick up the pieces of all the other areas. So I really appreciate your take and your dose of reality that, it's not, maybe, yes, you'll find a mentor and your road will be easier than others, but even the people who have mentors, their roads are still very challenging. And now that you're in practice 12 years later, you've seen it all, so to speak. You've been a part of all these different practices. How do you choose to practice now? Like, what is the I don't want to say the method or the technique, because I don't feel like, what is the system that you kind of put into play to allow you to continue to grow through your practice?
Well, in the words of my personal mentor, Professor Stuart McGill, it depends. So my practice is an it depends practice. It's patient-centered completely. So my practice is so patient-centered that I try to deliver as much of what the patient expects within reason, and what I think each patient would benefit from the most based on my personal experience and intuition of practicing for a long period of time. So there are some patients, based on what they report to me in history, previous experience, their past, their expectations of what they want out of the visit, what they heard chiropractic can do for them, what they think chiropractic should do for them, and all that. It can be adjustment only. It could be manual therapy and adjustment. It could be mainly rehab driven. It totally depends. I hate to use a cliche like a toolbox, but that's what I have. I just sort of have like a cookbook, and I'm waiting to see what the patient wants from the menu. So it's more of a communication-based practice, and I think that's where, when we do talk about things like pain science, at least that has opened the biopsychosocial model of pain. At least that's opened the door to telling the clinician it's very good and very valuable to discuss with the patient what they expect. And in that turn as well, I don't think patients are just patients either. I think they're also customers. So you'll hear a lot of young, indignant clinicians who say, I did this for my patient because I'm the doctor and they're the patient. And so I determine what they need, and they didn't like what I offered them. You know, like they wanted to be adjusted, but I felt like they didn't need to be adjusted today. I felt like they needed this instead. And usually I say, well, that's what they wanted as a customer. You either need to bridge that gap and say, here's why, as a doctor, I don't think you need that today, but I think you need this instead, or you need to bridge the gap and maybe do both. And so there are a lot of young doctors or clinicians out there that sort of neglect the idea that these patients are customers. And at some level, especially in the cash-based chiropractic world, chiropractic can quickly become a commodity. If you base your business on price points, the business can quickly become a commodity and not a valued service. So if you're a commodity and someone doesn't like the product you're giving them, they're going to go down the street to someone who maybe has a better price point, who will hit that commodity point as well and say, well, they're going to give me what I want and they're going to give it to me at a price that I like, so I'm going to go to them instead. But that guy down the street who doesn't give me what I want, you know, and then charges me more for it. So you have to bridge both of those gaps. You have to consider your patients as customers and patients. And then, of course, always walk that ethical line where the ethical box you operate within should never be broken at any one point in time. So that's sort of where that's how I practice the best I can. So it can get crazy because you never know what's going to come in and what you're going to do and how they're going to experience it and what you're going to try. There's no system to it. It's not like wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. You know, there's no, who knows what we're going to see when we see, but we do. I do tend to start to see certain trends with certain people. So if you practice that way, you start to see certain things come up. When a patient talks a certain way or uses a certain type of language, you start to say, okay, so I know where we're going here with this patient. They might be more XYZ oriented. Or you notice the history that a patient is a CrossFitter who doesn't like doctors in general and always comes in and says, it's just my rib, it's just my rib. And you realize there's a whole bunch more problems going on there. But if you really listen, you understand that this person doesn't want you to tell them there's a bunch of serious problems. They want you to say, everything's cool, let's just get you patched up and get you back out there on the floor, you know. So there's a lot of little biopsychosocial challenges, but it makes practice really fun. So maybe I lied before we rolled. Before we rolled, I said practice is mostly looking at kitty cat pictures of kids and kitty cats. You know, patients are showing you pictures of kids and their kitty cats, but it's a lot more than that. You're actually listening. You get them talking about their kitty cats and their kids, but then you listen for the space in between, and you learn that they're all pretty much scared of stuff, and your job is to unscare them. Or
yeah, and you know, and you mentioned you kind of called them you know, customers, but as you just said right there, like they're so, I mean, it's communication, it's relationship, you know, it's so much more than just that kind of you know, customer relationship. And I think that's what makes care or complementary care, or whatever you want to call that, kind of umbrella of what chiropractic falls into so unique is that because we're slightly outside of the hospital model, there is a lot more bedside manner that is necessary. And, you know, and hopefully we get that in school, but maybe not. I'm curious from you, you know, based on, you know, being the hiring director, kind of seeing, you know, students coming out of school wanting to be hired, and then also, you know, your own experience in clinical practice. Are there any improvements or things that you think that schools can do to assist students to be more successful once they get out?
No. It's not their job. It's not their job. Their job is to make you competent and make sure that you don't kill anybody. And to repeat, don't have sex with your patients, don't have sex with your patients, don't have sex with your patients. Their job is to make you competent and make you licensed wherever you decide to go. Their job is not to guarantee your success whatsoever. I mean, if you want to say what will give you success, I'd probably say the largest proportion of this is communication skills. Being able to communicate with people efficiently, being able to demonstrate empathy, to know when you need to be a teacher, when you need to be a father, when you need to be a brother or a sister to your patients, and when you need to be a school principal to your student patients. So communication's the biggest. I mean, if you want to learn anything, that's the thing you should be learning. I mean, besides business skills and things like that, which sometimes that's trial and error. That's the pitfall metaphor that we use. But communication skills, how they can't do that for you. You have to learn that on your own. You have to sit down in front of people and flub through conversations and flub through an ROF, or say something completely insensitive and not realize that you said it, and not take enough leadership when you're talking to a patient about their care, and then realize that they're not coming back. You know, there's a lot of different things where you're talking as a young chiropractor and you don't realize the damage, if I can use the word damage, you're using when you use your words. And actually, literally, physically, when it comes to the research, you can actually damage people with your words. So you can cause these nocebo effects that will damage people if you're running a little more of a doctor-centered type of practice instead of a patient-centered one. But you can also damage your business by the way you speak. Communication is the main thing. Business skills, me and a friend were talking about this earlier. It's business skill stuff for chiropractic. Here's my quote, not to offend anybody. If you see somebody out there who's successful in business and you're not, just remember in your mind at all times, dumber people are doing it. You don't have to be a genius to be good at chiropractic business. You have to be diligent and you have to put in your work, and you have to be a good communicator, but you don't have to be all that smart. There's like a 10-hour learning curve. If you pick a topic in business, in chiropractic, there's a 10-hour learning curve to each thing. If you put in a couple hours to learn how to convert your independent contractor position into an S Corp and how to reap those tax advantages, you can do that in 10 hours. If you want to learn how to do Facebook marketing, you could probably put 10 hours into that and you'll learn Facebook marketing. You know, all that stuff has a learning curve to it that you can do on your own and you can do now for free, because we got this thing here, this computer that we didn't have this stuff when I was in chiropractic college. We weren't doing any of this stuff. Like, you had to actually go to a chiropractor's office and be like, how the hell do you do that? Like, how did you get all these referrals from a medical doctor? Like, how did you get an attorney to, like, the attorney sends you pastries and flowers every day. How the attorney do that for you, you know? Now it's all there. Like, any piece of information you want is right there. So there's no excuses anymore. It's just applying your time, using, this is going to come up in backwards letters, but using focus to focus on what you actually need to accomplish versus what you think you need to accomplish. And the schools can't give you any of that stuff. They can't give you any of it. You have to get it on your own. So don't, not to go full libertarian here, but don't rely on your schools, don't rely on your government, don't rely on anybody, rely on yourself. Because in the end, if all the things go downhill, like in a bankruptcy court or a divorce court or down at the bar when you're drinking about how bad chiropractic was as a business and it's a tough gig, that all falls back on you. You can't blame the school or the government or anybody else. It's all on you. All they do is teach you how to have a license. Is that good enough?
Yeah, no, that not the answer I anticipated, and great at the same time. Just to
the education will change, though. It has to change. It'll always change. But when you interviewed Dr. Pearl, he said that you know, what he was taught in school is not what's taught in school now, and what you guys are learning is probably not what we were learning in school. And you'll have people that you will mentor someday, and they'll be learning completely different things. Things are changing. We know things are changing because you see people who make money off of the old way, and they're getting very nervous right now because things are changing and they can't control it. They want to control it. There's a whole industry, there's a whole complex around the subluxation. I call it the subluxation industrial complex, like the military industrial complex. It's a complex of people. It's the same guys, it's the same names. You see them over and over again, and they have to sell this certain model, and they have to sell it to you young students by saying, if you don't have this model, you won't be successful. Without us, you lose. And they know that you guys are sitting ducks in the water when you're students because they know you guys are panicking. Like, how you're not equipped to be out there. So they'll equip you, but they're going to equip you in their model, and their model is it's not current to what we understand about the human body. So I think when you interviewed Liam Schubel, when he was talking about communication, he was mentioning how you communicate what chiropractic does to people or for people. The evidence-based chiropractors don't communicate like that because we say, what is the best practice we can bring into our office, and then educate the patient about that. The Schubel subluxation-based technique is more like, how can we change the language to make sure the language is still appropriate to tie it all back to the subluxation model. So their philosophy is, let's change the language to keep everyone back on the focus of the bone out of place. And the evidence-based practitioner is usually like, well, what is the best evidence available to tell us what's the best thing to do for our patients? And that could change quick. As we know, if you follow anything when it comes to pain science research, certain modalities go out of the window really quick. And some of them should have been gone a long time ago. I mean, if anyone out there is really using an ultrasound machine on a spine instead of a doorstop, they're really way behind the times. But you know what? 20 years ago, they were teaching ultrasound. You know, right now they're teaching a lot of kinesiotape stuff. We might 15 years from now laugh at everybody who ever used kinesiotape. But 15 years from now, while we're laughing at them, someone will still be doing it. You know, so yeah.
When I interviewed Ann Jensen, she said that the research just wants to know if it works, and if it does work, how well it works. Mm-hmm. And so that's a whole different model of practice of figuring out, okay, what intervention actually works for this condition? And then, is this the intervention that is the best for this condition? Or is there something that actually would work better than what I have? And can I do that? Or do I need to, you know, send this person to somebody else? And that's a whole different model of practice.
And then that's a rough generalization too, because then you have to stratify patients into certain categories. So not only does it work, and does it work better than something else, but does something else work better for different people than it does for other people based on their personal expectations? You have to go that next level into the biopsychosocial model and say, okay, so for this type of person, will that work, or would this work better for this other type of person? So that's a whole level we can't even get near yet with our research, because that takes a lot of meta-analysis of things that I don't think we've been capable of doing yet. So
yeah, completely.
You can't. I mean, research is just a guide, anyways. I mean, the evidence is just a guide, but you have to understand how to read the evidence in order to get anything out of it. So there are definitely people who want to believe something, and then they go to the evidence to look for something that justifies that, and they go, here's my evidence, you know. apples are shaped like squares. That's what I believe. So let me go find something the evidence says apples are shaped like squares, and then I'm going to tell you, I'll see, here's the evidence. Well, the rest of the world is saying apples aren't shaped like squares. But, you know, that's the argument we tend to get into a lot of times in chiropractic, is people put the belief cart before the evidence horse, and then they try to get the horse to push everything along. And they can do that because maybe that is one thing education has to get a little bit better on in schools, is how to read and interpret research and literature and understand the importance of it a little bit better. You don't have to become a research wonk or get a PhD in research methodology as a student of chiropractic, but you need to know how to utilize those tools, and also need to know when someone is just selling you a line of crap, because there's a lot of crap out there that people are using to sell young students in programs and consulting and business stuff that is not based in any sort of evidence at all, but it sure is packaged like it looks like it's evidence, and the rest of the world's laughing at you. And some people don't care if they're getting laughed at. They're just going to keep doing what they want to do. But it's not an acceptable way to go, not in the future. Because once again, we have this thing here, and the public is just getting too darn smart. They're just too aware. You can only fool them so many times before they're not fooled anymore.
Yeah, because they can do their own research and really figure it out. You know, we've talked about a ton. We've talked about communication, you know, the psychosocial dynamics of practice. You know, we've talked about, you know, schools and the possibilities for improving schools through more research and that sort of thing. I know students are going to want to learn more from you in the future. What's the best place for students to find you, to get in touch with you, and to learn more?
So for the book itself, if anyone's interested in the book, I have a website for it. It's newchirobook@gmail.com. It's spam free. So basically you're just emailing me saying, hey, I'm interested in the book. And when the book comes out, I'll send you an email back, says, hey, the book's out. And that's about it. So there's not going to be a heavy like ad campaign behind it, and you're not going to get spammed. But if you're interested in the book and you read this or you see this, just shoot that newchirobook@gmail.com, and that'll let me know to put you on some sort of list that you're interested in it. I, along with a couple of my friends, we run a Facebook group called the Forward Thinking Chiropractic Alliance. It's been around for a couple of years now. We have about 3,200 members in the group. We bounce a lot of ideas off of each other in the group. It's pretty good conversation, things like that. You can join that. Not everybody gets in, but if you don't get in and you think you should, or you really want to get in for some reason, and one of the admins didn't admit, you just send me a private message on Facebook, and I'll get you in there. Other than that, I'm here. If anyone in the Portland, Oregon area is listening and they're a student or a young doc and they just want to spend time or hang out and see how I do things or talk or get a beer or whatever, you can always just hit me up. However, yeah, it's like I said, I'm just a clinician. I'm not really. I'm more of the sage wizard on the hill, in the fact that I'll come if the teacher will be there if the student appears, but I'm not chasing you down to sell you anything. I really do. I mean, I harp on it a lot, but I do think you got to watch out for the guys. You all know their names. If they don't have one program this year, they've invented a new program next year. There's always some sort of new way that they can keep their face out in front of you. You got to watch out for those guys, because they're just, ask them the last time they ran a practice, basically. Ask them the last time they went to work 40, 50, or 60 hours a week working on patients, and you'll get a good idea of who you should and shouldn't have as a mentor. If you're going to be a chiropractor and you're going to see patients, your mentor should be someone who actually sees patients too. And your best mentor might be the guy who's a couple miles down the street that you can just have lunch with and ask ideas with. It doesn't have to be a guy who's on Facebook all the time trying to get in front of you and sell you stuff. Not to say all those guys are garbage, but I just say you got to be a very skeptical customer. You got to watch what you buy. Yeah, man, just any questions, they should just go for it and ask whoever they want. Don't be afraid to call any. I mean, what you really need to do, what my first mentor said, is go visit 10 offices. Everyone always wants to go to the office that is like super busy, the $1 million practice, and see how they do things. After you've gone to that office, go to 5 more offices where they see like 5 or 6 people a day, you know, or working out of a strip mall, or the new doc that's only been there for a year, and see how they're living their life. So don't just cloud your own judgment. This would be just like the evidence-based conversation. Don't just choose the evidence you like best, but get a good sample size of how practice is done in whatever area you want to live. My last 2 pieces of information or advice that I give people is a lot of being successful in this business is about certainty. And you'll definitely hear the subluxation-based doctors talk about certainty a lot, because certainty is grounded in their philosophy. Well, even the evidence-based chiropractors, you know, using air quotes for that, they need certainty too. We all need certainty. It's one of Maslow's hierarchies of need. We all need some sort of certainty in our lives. So your pursuit here is the pursuit of as much certainty as you can, whether it's through evidence, through clinical practice itself and getting experience, through having a networking group or a mentorship group that reassures you that you're on the right path. You need certainty, and then you need gratitude. So don't ever forget, no matter how hard it gets in this practice, or how many times you do, quote unquote, get kicked in the teeth, or how many times you win, you need to be grateful. You need to be grateful for the people that came before you, and respect their struggles. And then you need to be grateful for the people who see you and their willingness to come to your office. And you need to be grateful for all the people in the world who don't have the opportunity to do the things you do, which on a daily basis, this is probably one of the most rewarding professions I think anyone could ever be involved in. So certainty and gratitude.
Yeah. Thanks for talking about the gratitude.
Certainty, gratitude.
From my perspective.
Certainty, gratitude, don't chase gurus. That's my advice.
Certainty, gratitude, don't chase gurus. That's perfect. And thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for, you know, adding your voice to the conversation. I think it's a really important voice to have out there, and for students to hear, especially at this stage in their trajectory. So really appreciate you coming on. Thanks once again.
Absolutely. You're doing a great job. I'm proud of you. Really
appreciate it.
Get it done.
If any of the viewers enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the DC to B Revolution. Like the video. Hopefully this will generate a lot of comments in the comment section below, and we can see what students are thinking about, what concerns they have, how they're developing their discrimination. This is such an important conversation, especially as this new generation of chiropractors starts to come out into the forefront. So thanks once again for being here.